that within most developed countries notions of pragmatism, notions of the fact that democracies have succeeded in tempering the market economy. In the 19th century, 18th century, the Industrial Revolution had some very negative effects on people, particularly working classes all over the world. We see data where life expectancy was reduced, hikes were reduced. We can look at medical records and see that actually living standards and much of among large fractions of the population actually went down. But eventually we passed legislation about working conditions, and eventually we circumscribed some of the worst kinds of behavior. In the 20th century we put regulations that imposed better environmental conditions, and so some of the damage was reversed, and that we have made the market economy work in ways that the benefits of it are at least far more widely shared than they were 100 years ago. There can now be no reasonable, science-based doubt about the reality of global climate change, effects brought on by the cumulative and rapidly growing emission of greenhouse gases, primarily carbon dioxide, into the atmosphere. As these effects become increasingly more obvious worldwide, so commercial interests, groups of concerned individuals and national governments have been gripped by what amounts to mass panic about what to do about it. Too many. Paul Ehrlich's Malthusian population bomb of 1968 appears about to explode in the world's face in an indirect version of his millenarian vision of population growth, which outpaces agricultural production capacity, with predictably catastrophic results for humanity. And his three-part crisis scenario does indeed seem now to be present: a rapid rate of change, a limit of some sort, and delays in perceiving that limit. Ehrlich's work was roundly criticized at the time, and later, from many quarters, and much of what he predicted did not come about. Nevertheless, can the world afford to take the risk that the climate scientists have got it wrong? As the chairman of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, Mr. Rajendra Pachauri, has recently pointed out, 11 of the warmest years since instrumental records began have occurred in the past 12, while major precipitation changes are taking place on a global scale. Hello. It's Megan. This week I'm going to talk about the difference between translators and interpreters. It's a common misconception that translators and interpreters do the same thing. So, I'd just like to highlight a few similarities and differences between the two. Firstly, translation refers to written communication, whereas interpreting refers to verbal communication. So for example, a translator will not attend a court hearing to verbally translate between the parties involved, but may translate the written evidence used in the case. Secondly, both jobs require different skills, and translate requires the ability to write well and comprehensively into a target language. This means that they need to have an excellent command of their native language. For example, although I can speak French to a good standard, I cannot translate from English to French, although I could translate from French into English. Which means I'm only halfway that to being an international player. An interpreter needs to be able to speak both languages professionally. Thirdly, the qualifications and experience required to become either a professional translator or interpreter do differ. Both roles acquire years of training with the resulting qualification. But what they can learn on the training will be completely different. So just to be clear, translators will translate written texts and interpreters will translate verbal communication. Well, the voyage manuscript has many different theories proposed for it. Some people think that it's a complete hoax. It's now been carbon dated from the 15th century. So it's most likely, if it is a hoax, that's been a 15th century hoax, which I personally don't believe. But some people think it's just gobbledygook. It's just an invention to make money. Somebody made it to fool people and make money. Other people think it's probably a code. In other words, someone encoded lots of secrets in it, hoping that no one would find out. And if so, that's been very successful because no one has cracked it so far. But in my opinion, it is actually a genuine script. Obviously, a human devised script that masking behind it a genuine human language. In a language, it seems to me to have more, if you like, Near Eastern, maybe Caucasian, Asian aspects to it rather than European, because of some of the words that I've decoded. So I would imagine that once we've actually managed to decode the script, we'll find that the language underneath is a natural human language, probably from that part of the world. So various conclusions. Yes, bees are in decline. These declines are well documented. There are real and reported by good strong scientific evidence. Which is the only evidence? The drivers of decline are many varied depending on species. The effects of pollinator loss could be absolutely huge. So is it a catastrophe? Not yet, but it could be. The positive side, we are aware of the problem. Awareness is being raised with time and people are taking action to fix the problem. We recognize the problem, at least these being done.